Turn right on Century Drive.
So we are arriving at Lippert to have our ABS system put on.
Turn right on Century Drive. Arriving at 1701 Century Drive, on the right.
So we're here to pick up our Brinkley, which just had its ABS system installed that we had won from Lippert. So it's pretty exciting that we're getting this put onto our unit, and we're going to meet with them shortly. They're going to go over the whole ABS system and how to operate it, or how it operates for us. And then we'll also be going over the auto-leveling system, which we've had a few difficulties with, but we're going to be getting educated on exactly how to use that going forward.
So let's go to Bay 3, because that's where the Brinkley is. They put that any higher and you're going to need a step stool.
I know!
Jeez Louise!
We didn't think about how short it is.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Good morning, Rob.
Another nice steamy one.
Nice to Alright,
This might actually be the first day in July in Elkhart County that hits 90 degrees, and I think it's been like 100 years since we've had a non-90 degree day
Okay.
in July.
Well,
So we're really pushing. We're really pushing today at the last minute. But yeah, we got your Brinkley unit.
Let me see if Jeremy's available and he can go over everything he did to the unit.
Yeah, so what happens is when we were trying to auto-level, you know, it goes through all the motions, but it wasn't level.
Yeah.
and the
so-
tires were coming off the ground.
And then the tires are coming off the ground, which there's so many people that are on the Brinkley forums that are saying it can be, it shouldn't be, and you know, our rule of thought is that they shouldn't be.
Yeah. It's a little give and take there. Like, we don't like it because the jacks are meant to stabilize, not support. So they're not meant to lift the unit off the ground. They're not meant to hold the weight of the whole coach. They're just meant to stabilize your coach. And the jacks may be able to handle it, but the frame isn't. So the best thing you can do is, if it is getting off the ground, you either block your tires or you block the jacks. And if it's not leveling like what you were talking about, like, we went through and we reset the 0 point in it.
Perfect.
And because when I was trying to level it, it just kept going up. It would level, and then it would go up again, and then it would be level, and it would go up again. And it's like, why is it still going? So So we set 0 point, and then I ran it. Well, we ran it several times, and it leveled perfectly fine. Only one time did the tires come off the ground, but we also have a concave right here where the center's super low compared to the back and the front. So it's hard to say. And then when we leveled it again, the tires aren't off the ground. So.
Here's one thing to take in consideration too. Something that Brinkley does that nobody else does. Your GVWR of your coach is 14,998 pounds. You have 16,000 pounds worth of axles. So you have 2 8K axles. So with the weight of the coach, it's not exactly compressing your suspension, because they do what most people don't, or most OEMs don't do, is have the axles be able to support the entire coach. Most of them are usually 6Ks, so you got 12,000 pounds on a 14,000 pound coach. So the suspension isn't compressing the way it normally would. So as the coach levels, the suspension's already at its not quite relaxed state, so it's automatically coming up just a little bit more than what other coaches may do, because as soon as the leveling hits on most coaches, it's letting that suspension system come back up just a little bit, where yours isn't, because it is built to that design. So take that a little bit into consideration, that you have capability on your axles to hold your entire coach.
And that's really good to know.
Yes.
And then one other question. So when we get to a site, one of the things we should try to get as level as we can using like Anderson or not.
Let the system do its job.
So, and what about putting something underneath the front?
The only thing we
blocks.
recommend is just the snap pads that you already have on there.
Okay.
We don't really necessarily recommend putting blocks and stuff like that, just because right now you have one point of contact to the ground. It's your jack to the ground. You start blocking up, and now you have multiple contacts. So if you start blocking up with homemade wood blocks, now you have the contact to the wood block to the wood block, and then a wood block to the ground. There's a lot of moving parts in there that could potentially cause a mishap.
So this, is that specific for the Titan system? Because the other system where they have the legs, the front legs that drop down, do you recommend blocking those?
No, because the thing with the electric system is that if you're blocking too much on the electric system, you're taking the actual operation of the system away from it.
Okay.
You know, everybody has their own opinions on the more you block, the better the system is. But the more you block, the more you take away from the actual operation of how the system is designed. That's why when you see that system dip and come back up, that's the natural operation of the system. If you take all that out, now when it dips and it can't go down far enough, now the back's got to overwork in order to make up the difference.
That makes sense.
So you have to be very cautious on how much you block if you decide to. I can't tell you to, can't tell you not to.
Sure.
But take into consideration the natural operation of the system.
Okay. And then as far as the controls go, I mean, would we really ever have to manually level?
Not necessarily. If
Okay.
you're on a pretty decent site or you feel uncomfortable, then sure. Now, you can take into another thing into consideration. Manually, you're moving it this much. During auto movement, the movements have to go more for that system to see what it needs to see. So when it dips, it's trying to see the movement of the internal sensor. Manually, you don't have to do that. Manually, you're doing little bitty increments. So something that the system makes, say, potentially this big of a movement, manually you can do this big, because you're doing it by a bubble level, where the system's doing it by reading the sensors, which is going to take a little bit more movement to see that sensor movement that it needs to see.
And I'm assuming the sensors are more accurate than a bubble level.
Just more automatic.
Right.
Because
Okay.
internally it's the same thing as what you're looking at on a bubble or on a speed or a bullet level,
Sure.
or a 2-foot or a 4-foot. It's the same principle, but it's taking more movement to see it.
Perfect.
Because it's in a sensor in the back and a sensor in the front.
Okay.
So by doing it manually, you're like, oh yeah, just a little bit, where the system's like, okay, there it is, okay, there it is, where you just like.
You get to see two spots being level versus just
so
one.
if you do get to a point where the ground ain't perfect and you are at an extreme angle, you can do it manually and not get tires off the ground, just making smaller movements as you go.
Perfect.
Also,
All right.
with the leveling, the difference between the bubble level and the electric leveling, you set that. You put that to where you want it to be. So like, let's say you are the type of person who likes to sleep with your head up high. You set your 0 point to where it's high in the front, then you put a bubble level down, it's not going to be the same. Right. The coach thinks it's level at that point, not the bubble level. So
Gotcha.
That's another thing to keep in mind. We have it set to like what a bubble level would be. We put it on the floor, right in the center of the kitchen, and it sets it right where we want it to be. And you are able to change it at any point in time. We have videos on that too. But some people like it to where their sink drains the way they want it to, or they have it where their eggs don't float to one side of the pan on their stove, or some people do it to where their doors don't swing, and some people do it, like I said, where their bed lifts up high or whatever.
And that's just recalibrating to the specific measurements that they want. So okay, perfect.
So, in other words, or not in other words, but if anything else, really, the only operation you should ever really do is once you get unhooked, you hit auto level, and then once you're ready to hook back up, you hit hitch height, and it goes right back to where it was when you unhooked. Now, if you mess with that system at all after you hit auto level, it will erase that because it screenshots where you were at whenever you go to unhook, right? Or whenever you hit auto level, it screenshots where you were at.
Okay.
So whenever you hit hitch height, it's going to go back to that spot within a couple degrees.
So that's even going to make unhitching and hitching quicker.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So really, the everyday use, you should really just get out of your truck, unhook it, hit auto level, and then when you're ready to hook back up, hit hitch height and hook back up.
Perfect.
It's super simple, and that's how these systems are supposed to work. Like he said, some campsites are all over the place. You're gonna have to probably maneuver around it, but that one in a seldom time that you're ever gonna have to do that.
Sure. All right, I appreciate it, Mark. Thanks so much.
Not a problem.